a presentation, like all virtual, and everybody could see my screen, but I couldn't see my screen or myself. I couldn't see myself. So it was just really weird to be talking to the computer and not seeing what my face looked like the expressions that I was making. And then I was like, well, whatever. It's not like I'm going to be able to change it as I'm doing them. So it's so weird.
So I think we are good to go. So as always, hello, welcome to March's Lagoon at Noon. How did we end up in March? I have no idea. My name is Brooke Blosser. I'm the Science Communications and Outreach Coordinator here at the Marine Resources Council. Just a few updates for you all. As per usual, we do have our first Friday Litter Sweep coming up on Friday. And then next Friday we have a mangrove workshop right here in Palm Bay, and then on Saturday, which I'm very excited about, is a garden day. So we'll be outside, kind of clearing out the gardens here, taking away some of that very sad, dead winter mass, and then replacing it as well. If you have any questions about some of the upcoming volunteer events that we have here at the Ted Marhead Lagoon House, come see me after the lecture, and I'd be happy to share that information with you as well. A couple of housekeeping things is for general. If you are watching this online, please, you will note that you are on mute, and you can put all questions that you have for the speaker in the chat. And then I will be asking those questions at the end of the lecture. If you are in person, you will notice that you have a notepad and a pen. Please ask all of the questions that you have on the note card and pen, write them down. I will collect the note cards at the end of the lecture, and then I will be asking the questions out loud. And I'm very excited to introduce our speaker. You may have noticed that last month, and if you receive our newsletter, which hopefully most of you do, that it was a very bird-themed month for the Marine Resources Council with all of our events that we have. So we are equally excited to announce a presentation about none other than shorebirds and shorebird research here in the Indian River Lagoon. So I'm going to introduce our speaker today. Yagen Gutierrez leads the shorebird conservation efforts for the East Coast Zoological Foundation, as many of you heard, also known as the Brevard Zoo. It is the lead partner for the Space Coast Shorebird Alliance. And Yagen coordinates rooftop and coastline monitoring routes, supports volunteer training, and works directly with businesses, property managers, and community partners to protect state-threatened species such as least terns and black skimmers, which are a personal favorite of mine. With experience in marine wildlife rescue, rehabilitation, habitat conservation, including working with manatees, sea turtles, and shorebirds, Yagen combines field research, community outreach, and hands-on conservation strategies to ensure the survival of Florida's most vulnerable coastal birds. And without further ado, let's give our speaker a hand.
Just because I don't see myself, it is happening, right? It is.
Yes,
Zoom.
you are all good. Yep.
Okay, good. Hi, how are you guys? So how many of you guys know about our local shorebird population here in Brevard County? You, a lot of you, some of you. So are any of you guys familiar with the Florida Shorebird Alliance? Some of you. Okay, so you're gonna learn a lot about who they are and what we've been doing. Hold on, I pressed it, but
Oh gosh, let's try again.
okay.
Brooke, have you clicked on the presentation? There you go.
Okay. All right, so this is just an outline of my presentation, and let's just jump right in. So who is the Florida Shorebird Alliance, for those of you who don't know? It was established in 2009, so really it hasn't been around for a very long time. And it is a partnership that's focusing on protecting and monitoring imperiled shorebirds in the state of Florida. And this is what the Shorebird Alliance partners look like. They can look like very different organizations. They can be on the county level, the state level, federal level, obviously nonprofits, and a ton of volunteers. So the Florida Shorebird Alliance is the big umbrella, and then all of us fall into that umbrella. And it is comprised of 12 different partnerships, as you guys can see, and we are number 9, the, I guess, orangey, I don't know, color. We are the Space Coast Shorebird Partnership. So who is the Space Coast Shorebird Partnership? So historically, the partnership was led by FWC, by a shorebird biologist. She also oversaw probably over 5 different counties or several other partnerships. She's actually based out of Jacksonville. So as you can imagine, she was very busy. This is basically the story of how the Brevard Zoo became involved in this project. I have worked with several other FWC staff. They said, hey, Yagen, do you think the zoo would want to be involved in this? We really need help in Brevard County. The birds in Brevard County really need help. Can the zoo help us out? And I said, okay, well, that's above my pay grade. I have to talk to my boss, who has to talk to the board, and then, figure out how that looks like. But obviously, here we are. The zoo is now the lead for the Space Coast Shorebird Partnership. And basically the zoo, became committed as soon as they found out, like, hey, our local population needs help. They said, okay, let's do it. And then my boss then said, okay, you're in charge. And then I said, I don't know anything about shorebirds. So I had a crash course on shorebirds. Last season was our first season as the lead. So it was a crash course for me. I didn't know anything about shorebirds. I mean, this is a photo in Satellite Beach. I would see the birds. I would say, oh my God, they're so cute. But that was all I knew. I didn't know that they migrated in. I didn't know that they were nesting here. I didn't know that they left. I didn't know anything. I didn't even know that a flush is something bad for birds. Like when you flush a bird that, they're just hanging out, and then you know how the kids run up to them and they all leave. That's called a flush. I didn't even know that could be a bad thing. So it was a crash course for me. And throughout the process, I also became an expert in roofs. You guys will also learn why I became an expert in roofs. There's a lot of different unique local challenges that our birds face here in Brevard County, and that is that none of the nesting happens in the beach. Our beaches are very narrow, so our birds nest for the majority on rooftops, on gravel rooftops. So very unique challenges, and that's why it was really important for somebody that's local to be the lead partner, because we can get to certain rooftops or handle certain situations quicker than somebody that's a few hours away. So it was really important for us to have somebody here with boots on the ground and have a lot of access to volunteers, and the zoo has an incredible volunteer program. So that's basically how we became involved in the efforts. I press it, but maybe I'm impatient. Okay. So just for a little shorebird, seabird lesson here. These are the main differences between shorebirds and seabirds. But for the sake of this presentation, just to make things easier, I'm going to refer to all of them as shorebirds. The main birds that we get here in Brevard County are least terns and black skimmers. These guys are colonial nesters, so you could actually see them nesting together. A lot of times, we could have theoretically some oyster catchers, but we really haven't seen any in Brevard County. And those guys are solitary. And we do also have Wilson's plovers, but they're nesting in like restricted areas that a lot of us probably don't have access to. And they are also solitary nesters. So they're very elusive. And if they see a human, like they'll try to hide, or they'll run like the opposite direction of where their nest actually is or their chicks are. Whereas these guys, you'll see them in huge colonies nesting a lot of times side by side or kind of intertwined together. All of these birds are state threatened, so that's why it's very important. And then depending on the county of Florida, how their nesting habitat situation is, then their numbers could be dwindling even more of that local population of that county. A little bit of info about these guys. So the least terns are the smallest of the terns. I'm in the process of getting decoys, like the actual size of like a replica of the bird, but they're very small, probably like around this big. And these guys nest in what we call a scrape. So basically they just dig a little hole on the ground, or on the, I guess, on the sand or on the gravel, and then they can do either 2 to 3 eggs at a time. And the most current numbers that we have are, there was 12,940 breeding pairs in 2023. Oh, did I go back? Yes, I did. Okay, well, it's working. And this is a really cool guide on how to tell, well, it's not that easy to tell, but sort of how to tell where they are. But as you guys can see, it all happens very quickly. So in 3 weeks, these guys are ready to go, which that's exactly what we want, because there's a lot of predators, there's a lot of things that are going on. So they need to be ready to go and ready to fly very quickly. And this is a video of a lot of chicks. Oh, there you go, you pressed it. A lot of chicks just kind of huddling together. There's like 2 under there as the adults go and trap and forage, and then all the chicks kind of form like a little gang and they try to stick together, except that guy, obviously. Yeah, he's like, oh, I'm going by myself. This video was not taken here in Brevard County. It's from another location. But just to give you guys a visual. Okay, next. Oh, yeah, your favorite and my favorite. I'm wearing the earrings. I love these guys. These guys, the joke is that they don't have eyes because the eye is bright in the black part, so you can't even tell. But similar nesting as the least terns, they nest in the scrape, and their numbers are around 6,800 in 2023. And then these are the aging guide on the black skimmers. And then this is a video that we captured of a very important moment, an Uber Eats delivery. Very important. Check this out. I know. And I just cannot believe that chick swallowed the entire thing. Delicious. Yeah. So as you guys can see, they take turns incubating the nest. Yeah, and they take turns foraging. The mom and the dad, they share the load. Okay. And this is almost, I want to say, almost flight capable black skimmer. And oh, okay, sorry, I may have pressed it and then you have pressed. And then this is just to show you guys how far, if you have the right equipment, you can get a really good view of these birds, but from a really safe distance. Yeah, look at that. Right? Isn't that amazing? What camera was that? Or, what scope? As you guys can see, look how wide that beach is. None of our beaches are that wide. And that's what they need. You can tell that this is like the high tide line. So it's like our beach has the high tide, and then it has another section where we hang out and sunbathe, and then that's it. Our beach basically ends as the sea grapes. But look at this, guys. It's like the high tide, then you can hang out. Then there's like, I feel like I see some tracks. Yeah, I see the tracks of like ATVs, and then nesting habitat, and our beach just does not support that. Did I go back? Oh, okay. So just throughout the entire state, they're experiencing the same threats. Human disturbances, environmental pressures, erosion, dogs on the beaches. In our beach, we don't have any driving, but a little bit more up north, like Daytona, they can drive on the beach. And those beaches are wider, so I'm sure they experience a lot of trouble. predation, development. So all throughout the state, these are all the problems that they're experiencing. And I may have to wait. All right. And then in Brevard County, so all of these photos are from Brevard County, are photos that we have taken in Brevard County. So in Brevard County, the issues that we have is that our beaches are not wide enough. And then our birds have started to nest in rooftops. Historically, there's, I guess at some point they thought it was a great idea to have roofs that were flat, and then on top of the flat roof, they would put a layer of gravel. So just loose little pebbles. And then the birds, they were like, oh, this kind of looks like a beach. I can create my little scrape and I'm safe. You know, I'm high up. So they started nesting on rooftops. The issue is that they're kind of being phased out. Everybody that's re-roofing is not re-roofing to gravel. They're just re-roofing to like your membrane, like TPO. What I've heard is that it's cheaper. Insurances accept it better. Their insurances are not allowing anybody to re-roof to gravel just because it's like loose, you know, it's loose pebbles. So we have a lot of gravel rooftops in Brevard County, but a lot of them are very old. They're even like collapsing. At this point, they don't even have any gravel left. They're just like the tar of where the gravel was put on. And then the other habitat where our local birds are nesting are in construction sites, because our dirt kind of looks like sand a lot of times and has a lot of crushed shell. So several of the ground sites that we had this past season were in construction sites, and they're great habitat, but there's also a construction site. So there's a lot of things that could be going on. And obviously, as I have mentioned several times, our beaches are not wide enough. So hopefully you guys can see this. The pink diamond are all of our rooftops that have historically had nesting on them, spread all throughout Brevard County. But that doesn't mean that all of them have had active rooftops in the last 5 years or so. Last year, we only had around 5. Well, we had 5 rooftops that the birds actually came, but not all of them, they stayed and nested. We only had 3 that they stayed and nested on. One of them was what I hope was very successful, because we could see that there was hundreds of birds, but the roof was very high, and the parapet, which is, I told you guys I was a roofing expert now. So the parapet is the edge of the roof, was really high as well, which was good because that means chicks couldn't fall off the roof. But we also couldn't get eyes on the roof. Like we couldn't tell if there was like chicks hanging out on the edge. So we really have no data from that rooftop other than the adults that we would see flying, and we're talking in the 200s. So hopefully there was a lot of chicks, and they did stay there till the end of the season. So that means that it wasn't predated. They didn't fly off and get spooked by a predator or anything like that, but we don't have data. And that's the other really hard thing with rooftops. It's really hard for us to get data, because unless if we have like another tall building by it that we can get a good look, or if we build a good relationship with the rooftop owners and they allow us to put cameras on that rooftop, then we really don't have a lot of data of the success of that rooftop. Another rooftop that we had that we think was successful, but it did get predated by crows. They didn't have any parapets, so we would literally see the chicks on the edge, and we would be like, don't do it. So we had volunteers going multiple times a day, literally picking up fluffy chicks from the ground and putting them back on the roof. And thankfully that rooftop owner, he's gonna work with us this year, and he's gonna allow us to put chick fencing up there. And hopefully I can convince him to let us put a camera, because that would be really good. So all those diamonds are rooftops. there are rooftops that are still gravel, but the birds may have moved on for one reason or the other. Maybe there was a huge predation event, or they just moved on somewhere else. The purple ones that you can kind of see on the edges, those are our beach routes. Even though we don't have any beach nesting, there is still a lot of data to collect on the beach, because the birds, when they come in, we'll probably see them first on the beach. So when they first come in, it's really important data. It's really, really cool to know, okay, they're here. They're gonna find the rooftop. Let's all keep our eyes out to see where they're gonna start nesting. Towards the end of the season, we see them at the beach with their chicks that are now flight capable, and they're teaching them how to forage. So it's really cool to see the whole cycle, come to an end right before they leave again. So we do monitor the beaches once a month from March to, well, actually we don't start in March, but like April to September, we go once a month and we walk the route minimum to see what we can see on the beach. And then there's 3 of them, and they're all really close to each other, but it's this turquoise aqua one, and that is what we call a ground colony, and those are those construction sites that I mentioned. So we had 3 of those. They were all successful in the sense that the business owners worked really well with us. They understood that we both had a mission. Their mission was to keep building, and ours was to protect the birds. And one of them was an incredible story. It's the Martin Marietta. I have to give them a huge shout out. They're the Martin Marietta down by the port. So it's like a sand quarry. And the birds just thought that was the best nesting habitat for them. And when they realized that these birds were nesting there, by the time they contacted me, they had already closed off the whole area where the birds were nesting. And when I went over there, she said, oh, this is a bird habitat now. Nobody's allowed in this area. And believe it or not, these birds were not fazed at all by the trucks coming in and out, getting on the weight. They have like those heavy trucks full of sand, getting on the weights, the loud noises of the brakes, honking. They wouldn't even flush. And we had over 200 birds there, tons of chicks, and then 2 coyotes came in. So you guys know the story. It was heartbreaking. I did not speak to that volunteer for like a week because we were both grieving. We were like, let's not talk about this. But they were so amazing to work with. And we know that if the birds are not extremely traumatized and they come back this year, we know what to do now. We have several things that we can try with FWC and their predation biologists to see. But a lot of times, especially it's too soon, maybe they won't come back because they'll remember. They'll remember, I'm not going back there. It was horrible. Let me go back. So yeah, that's basically what my database, my shorebird database looks like. All the rooftops, all the beach routes, and our ground colonies. And I keep track of all of them, and I make sure that all of them have eyes on them throughout the entire season. And I'm the only paid staff that does this. My entire team is volunteers. So I have a lot of volunteers that help me keep an eye on all of these locations. So this is what a gravel rooftop can look like, and this is what it looks like when they're nesting up there. This is just an example of what a ground colony can look like. If you guys are familiar with Satellite Beach, this area does not look like this anymore, but it was right by Hightower Beach. Montecito is over here, but now there's like actual townhouses. So we did have an active ground site there with a few birds, but now that grass has grown and there's actual houses there, so they don't nest there anymore. But just to give you an example, that's what a ground colony can look like. And then these are 3 separate videos, which I'm gonna press it, and hopefully this one starts. There we go. So this is that sand quarry. Look at all these birds. they dumped all that gravel all around and created like a berm for them so that the chicks wouldn't fly, like run off and kind of leave the area. Right here, all the trucks would come and these birds did not care. Our birds are, they're special. This is one of the construction sites that they were building houses, and I'm not gonna lie, a few nests got crushed, as you guys can see, because the process, we have to follow a process. As soon as this gets discovered, let's say you guys are driving around and you hear a least tern and you see them and you call the zoo, you're like, hey, I just found some least terns. Well, I have to go over there. I have to call FWC law enforcement. FWC law enforcement has to come in, has to see an actual nest, and then has to talk to the property owner and say, hey, there's an active nest here. You need to stop the construction. So it's a process because it is private property. And that is why it's very important for us to really collaborate with these businesses, because at the end of the day, it's their property. So I was standing there very frustrated, like, please stop driving that tractor or whatever. There's birds right here. But I needed to wait for the right authority to come in, because who am I? I'm not FWC law enforcement. That's for them to do. This is a close-up of this site of when we had chicks, and we put pallets because it can offer protection from predators, avian predators, and also from the sun. So you can see there's a tiny little chick hanging in there. I think I zoom in and you can see him, and sorry if it's blurry, it's from very far away. And he's just a little fluff ball. I do go closer or it gets nicer. There he is, lifting up his head. Or not, I lied. So yeah, pallets are one of the tools that we put on these ground colonies, or even on rooftops if we can do that, because it provides protection. Another thing that we do is that crows are very smart, but they're a really horrible avian predator for these guys. But if you put a dead crow, then they don't come. So I went on Amazon, bought a dead crow, and I did almost convince my husband to pick one off the street. But he refused. He's like, this is where I draw the line. Buy one on Amazon. So we hung a dead crow on here, and the crows never came back. But then sometimes it's like another crow gang, and they're like, well, we haven't seen that one. So then they come, and then you have to like wait for them to figure it out. Let me see if this goes to the next. All right. So some of the overall statewide conservation efforts that are happening is in 2011, there was a database that was developed called the Florida Shorebird Database. And that database, all of you guys can have access to it. You just have to create an account. And you can see where all these birds are nesting throughout the entire state of Florida. And it's really interesting. I was on vacation last summer and I was going to the West Coast, and I said, oh, I wonder if there's any big colonies over there. And there was a 900 black skimmer colony in Sarasota. So I brought all my stuff and I was like, okay, family, let's go see the black skimmers. So it is a really cool database that all of you guys can join, and you guys can like stalk the birds and see where they're nesting. It is also the database that we use to monitor all of our rooftops and our routes, and we put in all that data. And that is, as you can see, it's only from 2011. So it's not decades and decades and decades of data that we have compiled in the shorebird. So we're still learning a lot about the birds and the trends. Brevard County doesn't even have a banding program for our shorebirds. So any chick that fall off a roof, we don't know. Like, did they survive? Did they fly away? Did they come back here? We don't know any of that data. So it's all very new. So it's really exciting because that means that we can do a lot of things with the program. I guess I explained what the database is all about. Another conservation effort is basically all of the, okay, no, I went too far. Well, this is all the data that gets put into the Florida Shorebird Alliance, Florida Shorebird database. And what are we doing in Brevard County? So, as I said, the rooftops are kind of being phased out. We are currently in the process of getting approved for a nesting platform. This is a platform that was built in Key West. There's actually 3 in the state of Florida right now. This is what it looks like from the bottom. It's about 15 feet high. And then that's what it looks like from the top. And all of those birds are what I mentioned earlier, decoys. So they're fake least terns. So when we build our platform, we would put decoys up there, and we would also have a sound system doing the noises of the least terns or the black skimmers to kind of say, hey, come nest over here. We're hanging out here. And this platform is going to be put in the Pine Island over at Merritt Island. Yeah, Merritt Island. And that's basically, we're more than halfway through the grant process. So very high chances of that happening. This is a project that I really wish happens, because as you guys can see, so this is in Coco, in the Thousand Islands, that you guys can go kayak there. There's like the mangrove trails. As you can see in all these islands, there's no vegetation in the middle. And last year, somebody went and was kayaking around there and got off and saw that there was scrapes all over that sand in the middle. So towards the end of the season, when we found out, we didn't see anything, because at that point there had been rain and everything. There was no evidence of any nesting. And there's a lot of vegetation, which is not ideal, because that just means more predators can hang out. But I'm really hopeful that our birds are nesting there. And we put cameras up there, and you better believe I'm going to be stalking that area during the nesting season to see if they are nesting there. I'm really hopeful, just because, I mean, these birds were nesting next to trucks. So I'm hopeful that maybe they have been nesting there, because we actually don't have any rooftops around that area of the Thousand Islands. So I'm optimistic. So another thing that we are thinking about doing is, so that circle that's circled over there around the little Q-tip, that's where we would put the platform. But right across from it, there's a lot of open, like just an open area that the county has also allowed us to put more platforms on there too. So we have a lot of collaboration between different organizations in Brevard or the county. But ideally, these are really expensive, and you have to upkeep them and things like that. So in a perfect world, if we could just somehow create habitat that's on the ground that maybe just has to be maintained right before the season, then that would be ideal. But there is a lot of things in the works now, so it's really exciting. So some of the stewardship, some of the efforts that we as volunteers or that the programs do is, in the beginning of the season, we go to these rooftops that we know are going to be active, and we put up the chick fencing. You can't really see it, but it's basically like just a chicken wire that it doesn't even get put on there permanently. You just hold it with like cinder blocks, and you put it throughout the edge of the roof. And then we also have the volunteers that go depending on the rooftop. So sometimes it could just be once a month for the nesting season, or they go every week once the birds arrive. And then once we notice nesting, like once you see a bird flying back and forth with a fish, that means that there's chicks up there. So then you go every few times a week. And then if you have a situation that chicks are falling, then we have multiple volunteers going daily. I create like a whole shift guide. And then what happens every afternoon in the summer? Rain. So they can get washed out, they can get, blown by the wind. So that's what we do with these rooftops. Oh, this is a good photo of what the chick fencing looks like. And it's not permanent. So a lot of the times, we have to really work together with the rooftop owners and say, please let us get up there before the chicks, before the birds arrive. It's not a permanent thing. We're not doing anything to your rooftop. And they have to allow us, and they can also not allow us. So this is why it's really important that as an organization like the zoo that's really loved in our community got involved with this. Because I think the business owners, when they see me come and they see Brevard Zoo, they're like, okay, yeah, like let's work together. This is another really interesting newsletter that goes out every month. You guys can go to the FWC website and you can search Operation Rackline, and every month they send you a newsletter of everything that's happening throughout the state, shorebird related. So if there's shorebirds trainings going out, webinars, you can see all those dates and all that information. It's really, really interesting. So I highly recommend that. So let's talk about what happened. We are about to start our second year. What day is today? What, Tuesday? So on Thursday, we have our preseason meeting. So we are about to start our second year as the zoo being the lead partner. And it was a very successful year. I've done many presentations like this, teaching everybody about our Brevard local shorebird population, telling everybody what's going on, how they're nesting on rooftops. And because of that, a lot of people have called in and said, hey, I saw some least terns flying in this rooftop, or I saw least terns flying around in this by this retention pond, like what's going on? And I would drive over there and they were nesting on the ground. So just really spreading the word about what's going on with these birds in our county. And it's been really, really successful. Also, we have so many people in the community that are helping. I have somebody helping me create like fake eggs so that we can like do tabling events so that people can see what the eggs could look like. Also, we have a volunteer that has created 3D printed chickabooms. So chickabooms is what we would use to put the chicks back up on the roof. So historically they use a milk carton, but a lot of our roofs, like for example, the ones where they were falling off of, it was a U-Haul. It was really tall building. So by the time you put a milk carton in a pool, like cleaning pool, it was like swaying all over, and it was just, so he designed and 3D printed. I literally just picked them up yesterday. The third version of this chickaboom that has an actual latch that we can open from the bottom with a rope, and it's a clear with vents, plastic little housing. And we were able to put like 3 of those chicks in there, swing it up to the roof, pull it, open it, and tilt it, and they fall back on the roof. So the community teamwork has been incredible. And any organization that you guys think this presentation could be beneficial so they can learn more about what's happening in Brevard County, that would be amazing. Let me know. At the end of the presentation, my email's there. You can email me if you would like to volunteer, if you would like to get involved, or if you think that I can present this information to anybody else. March 22nd, I am offering a shorebird training at the zoo. So for anybody that wants to be involved with volunteering, I'm basically going to teach you everything about what that looks like, how to monitor a rooftop, how to monitor the routes, how to input the data, what you're looking for. You can pick like, okay, I live here. I commit to checking on this rooftop once a week. And when I say check on the rooftop, it doesn't mean get on the rooftop. Actually, you never get on the rooftop. Neither do I. We don't want to disturb the birds while they're up there. It's just literally staying in the parking lot, in your car, and you're just hearing them. And a lot of times they'll flush because, another bird flies by or something happens. And then honestly, taking a picture in that moment is the best thing you can do. You take a picture, boom, and then you zoom in and you count, and that was your monitoring. But of course, you're going to want to stay there longer because there's 2 courting in the air, or one is flying in a fish, or you might see a chick on the edge of the roof and you're like, don't bob. So there could be a lot going on in the roof. But it's a really easy job to volunteer and to help out with the effort. And there's rooftops, like how I said, spread all throughout Brevard County. So there could be one literally right by your house. A shopping center could have a gravel rooftop. So these are the credits for all the videos and some of the photos in the presentation. And here is my email. I think I finished the time. And I guess now is when we do questions.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Perfect.
I hope I
So,
covered everything.
I'm gonna come around and collect the note cards from you. In the meantime, I do have a couple of questions online as well. So first and foremost, one of the attendees wants to know what your formal position is at the Brevard Zoo.
Formal. Well, so my position is conservation specialist. I was originally hired to do manatee rescue and rehab. So yeah, but now I'm doing both. But now I said no more manatees. And then my boss was like, wait, you're trading the manatees for the birds? And I'm like, yes. So right now I'm helping out with the manatee efforts, and then now the birds are gonna start getting me busy. So because they're about to arrive. So I hope that answers the question of what my formal role
Nice.
is.
I have another pretty good question. This is about the rooftops in particular. So, it's kind of a two-part question because part of this question is mine. How do people get on top of the roofs, for one? And two, could you use drones to look on top of the roofs?
So since these are businesses, there's access, to a lot of times there's the ACs are up there, so they have ladders, but I don't get on the roof. I theoretically could. Obviously not while they're nesting. We don't want to disturb them, but ahead of time or after. But yeah, they're just regular access, through a ladder or whatever. And drones, it's a very good question. Number one, there's a lot of restrictions on drones because of where we live. The airport, the Space Force base, all these things. There's a lot of different airspaces that you need to have special permitting and things like that. So you do have to find the right people with the right equipment and the right certifications to be able to do that, and know how to apply for these permits to fly drones. Number two, if the business doesn't allow us to fly a drone, then we can't do that. So we always need to have permission from the business owner. And number three, if there's birds nesting up there, we cannot fly a drone because that's going to disturb the birds. So it's I wish there would be a simple answer. Yeah, we could just fly a drone and be like boom, 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 boom. Oh, perfect. But the birds are going to see something flying. So it's tricky. Yeah.
That's a good question. What would you consider to be the most endangered shorebird or seabird that we have here in Brevard County?
Well, I know the least terns, their numbers are really going down, at least in Brevard County. Personally, okay, I don't know the data, I don't know the numbers, but I have yet to see any actual black skimmers nest in Brevard County, all of last year, and that was my only year. We did have obviously all these colonies that I mentioned, they were all least terns, and we did have a rooftop that there was maybe 3 black skimmers up there with them, but I don't have numbers. I didn't see a chick, I didn't see anything. So I want to say maybe they are here. I know that there's a lot of black skimmers that hang out in Sebastian Inlet and even over at Jetty Park. But I think those guys are here year round and they leave actually during the nesting season. And the ones that come in, I have no idea where they're nesting. So I don't have actual data, but the ones that I've seen the least nest here are black skimmers. Or obviously oyster catchers, since there's none, but they're technically supposed to be nesting here. So yeah, I would say probably those two, but I just learned about birds. So whoever asked that question, don't don't get mad at me if I said it wrong.
This is kind of a follow-up question too to some of those nesting sites and whatnot. The map you had up, it looked like some of those maybe roofs or condo roofs or
routes or-
construction sites and
yeah.
whatnot were really inland.
Yeah.
And so how far inland can they nest in theory?
So all they need is really a food source. In Vieira, there's a lot of water. So there's a lot of retention ponds. That really active rooftop that I mentioned that there was over 200 birds was at Dillard's in the mall. And there was a retention pond right across the street. So that was actually a great place because you could see them flying very low and just go into the retention pond and come right back. So as long as there's water close by and there's food, then they'll nest there. But yes, I do remember when I started in this journey, sitting in on all the calls of all the partnerships, and they're doing a lot more research to know exactly how many miles these birds will actually go inland. And I believe they were saying even up to 5 miles. Because as long as there's food, then they do it. But the adults, I just asked this question to FWC, and I want to say that the adults, they said, could forage even up to 7 miles, or like once their birds are free flighted, they'll take them to the beach to learn how to forage on the beach properly. So yeah, it's as long as there's food, they're really just very opportunistic. So they'll just take advantage of anywhere that's suitable.
This is kind of a two-part question as well,
Okay.
because I have two separate questions that are kind of related to each other, so I'm going to mush them together.
Okay.
Which is there any cooperation with the county or any local municipalities about birds nesting on the rooftop there? Is kind of the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, are you aware of any city planning policies that would incorporate more flat roofs to compensate for the lack of coastal habitat?
So the first question, so much collaboration between different cities within the county. For starters, I've reached out to a lot of them that have like a newsletter or social media posts, and they're like, yes, send us, let's do an interview, let's create a video, let's spread the word, like the city of Cape Canaveral, in the Atlantic, that they have a newsletter. So a lot of collaboration, even like on their social media platforms and things like that. And also allow me to go to different presentations, their monthly meetings, things like that as well. Also the EELS program, and I'm sorry if I get this wrong, I believe maybe he's a director, but Mike Knight, he's very high up there, I guess, with the EELS program. I'm sorry, Mike, if somebody tells you that I got your title wrong. He is so amazing, and he has been so great to work with ever since I got involved in this program, because I had just heard like, oh, Mike Knight with the EELS program, he really, likes the birds. And he's the one that discovered the ones in the Thousand Island. He's the one that said, I saw some scrape spear, but I didn't know a lot about shorebirds, so I wasn't sure. So he is constantly looking for habitat where we can create nesting habitat for these birds. And who else than somebody in that position in EELS that have so many properties throughout the county that we can potentially create habitat. So we've been collaborating with him and FWC, which they're the experts in where we can create the habitat. What's ideal, like if there's a lot of power lines, we don't want that because there's a lot of predators that can hang on the power lines. So there's been a lot of collaboration between a lot of people in the whole county to get this started. But again, it's just me, so I'm just emailing everybody and trying to go everywhere. And like I went to the birding festival. I'm just trying to do all the things to just spread the word that Brevard Zoo is trying to help with this effort to see who has any ideas, and all ideas are welcome. So yeah, it's been really, really awesome because a lot of people really want to help. Okay, that was the number one. That was part one of that question.
Yes.
What was part two? Oh, the rooftop.
Yes.
Okay. It goes so much higher than what we can imagine to try to make these make people want to have gravel rooftops. there was even, I had a call with, organization. It was a bird, like a huge bird organization, but basically they wanted to create a program kind of like that you get like a tax break for creating habitat for the birds during nesting season, kind of like the green stamp, that like certain, like you can have on like certain businesses and things like that. But again, that is a very long-term thing to happen. To me, it would be really cool if we could even just put like kiddie pools with gravel on some rooftops that could be suitable. But again, we have hurricanes and we have storms. So like I don't know. I don't know what else we can do that would be allowed, because I feel like a lot of people would be afraid of doing that because of the insurances, especially their businesses. So it's complicated. So to me, I want to do what I can do, like what I'm in control of, and that's spreading the word and just protecting them when I know that they're out there nesting. And if we can find that they're already nesting somewhere, just really try our best to protect them there.
Great response, and I think having worked with municipal governments in my past life, I think incentives is always the way to go over, punishment. So thinking about those incentives could be helpful in the future. This is a question you mentioned at the end of the first question that, people really do want to get involved and want to be part of helping these birds survive. And so you talked a little bit about this, but can you maybe elaborate a little on how citizen scientists can become involved with surveying, and how they can get involved if they do want to volunteer for this mission?
Yeah. So the number one step is you have to become a zoo volunteer. We have created a, well, I'm still working on it. If any of the volunteers are listening to this, they're like, Yagen. Because this is a new program. I'm kind of figuring it out as I go. And in a perfect world, what I want to do is create like an expedited way for people that just want to do shorebirds to become zoo volunteers, because the zoo has an incredible volunteer program. But if you actually want to be at the zoo, there's a lot of different areas that you can volunteer, and they all have different trainings, and you have to have, like, I'm assuming maybe different backgrounds or different abilities or whatever. But our program is very different. We don't have to be at the zoo. We're out there in the wild, So I'm trying to create an easy way for people to become a zoo volunteer and become a shorebird volunteer. But the first step is to become a zoo volunteer. You have to track your hours that you're volunteering. Then it's attending the shorebird volunteer that I'll be hosting. It's March 22nd. So if anybody wants to be involved, shoot me an email and I'll figure out what to get you, to get you there to become a zoo volunteer. And then is in that training, I'm going to teach you how to do all the things, and then you decide what works for you. If you like to walk the beach every week, then that's perfect. Let's find the route that fits where you walk, and I'll teach you how to input it in the database on what you saw. And that's amazing. You're helping tremendously. Or if you always go to this grocery store on your way to work or on your way back or whatever, you drive by this gravel rooftop, then you can go and scope that out. So does that answer the question? Kind of how to get involved, but it's very important. This data that we are collecting, not just where they're nesting, but also even your hours as volunteers, is what I can use to apply for grants, to get money for the program, to buy cameras, to buy the decoys that cost, like $150 each, because they have to be brought in from this place in Maine that creates them. So, it's everything costs money, signage. So all the hours that I can say, hey, this effort has this amount of hours that we're putting in, and apply for grants. That's the way that we can get money to fund the program. So that is how you guys can help the program and the birds.
Awesome. If someone were to volunteer, and would there be any special occasions where they might not need to keep a distance from the birds. Or you might not need to keep a distance from the birds.
Yeah, when the birds fall off the roof. Yeah, last year we had chicks that fell off the roof and one of the volunteers was like, no, and I was like, grab the bird, put it in the thing, put it up on the roof, you know? So yeah, I mean, obviously we can't touch the birds. It's kind of like the manatees or the sea turtles, you know, we can't touch them. But in that case, you might get the permission from FWC to grab the turtle or, you know, hold the manatee or whatever. So there's different occasions that you are gonna have to do it. But other than that, no, it is completely hands off. We don't want to disturb the birds. Like when they're in that platform, you know, they're 15 feet above the ground. We don't want anything to do with them because we don't want to spook them. And also, if they leave the egg and for over 15 minutes, how hot is it in the summer, which is when they're nesting? So those eggs could really not become viable if we spook them bad enough that they leave for over 15 minutes and they leave the egg uncovered and also more exposed to predators. So we don't want to, you know, disturb the birds, but a lot of times you might have to if they're falling to the ground.
That is often the case in many wildlife.
Yeah, you might have to. Which I think all of us are excited when that happens, right? We're like, yay, get dirty and handle something.
Yeah. And then there's another kind of lengthy question related to the stress of birds that I'm going to ask as well. Before I ask this question, is there anybody who had questions in the audience that maybe wrote them down after I collected the card and you would like me to come collect your question cards now? No? Okay, so someone in the chat says that they care deeply about shorebirds in the role in their coastal ecosystem, and this is a question that they approach with a lot of respect and intention. There has been a significant amount of guano accumulation at their workplace that folks have brought to their attention, specifically on berths and piers. It has created legitimate health and safety concerns. I would greatly appreciate any guidance on humane, sustainable shorebird deterrent strategies that can help reduce congregation in those areas without causing harm or undue stress to the birds.
What they said was happening a lot?
It says they
iguanas? Did they say iguanas?
Yeah, it's happening on
Bird poop.
Oh, I have
berths and piers.
So bird poop and piers?
Yes, is from what I'm understanding.
Well, for starters, I can guarantee you that none of those birds are least terns or black skimmers because they would not hang out there. And all the other birds, this is how much I know about them. But no, I have no advice on how to deter them because they're hanging out there because they're eating right there. And a lot of times I think possibly the best way to deter them is to have a lot of education with the local people that are there that are fishing, that maybe feed the birds, or leave like scraps, like all the seagulls in the beach, how people feed them and things like that. That is possibly the best way to deter them because they're really meant to be there. It's their habitat, and that pier was not always there. So they would have already been there hanging out on that beach. So I guess I'm sorry, I don't think putting one of those like owls or anything like that would work. Because that's where they're eating and that's where they're hanging out at. So yeah, and they're probably there because they're getting some free food too.
Probably true.
Hope that answers your question.
How many of us have had a sandwich stolen from a laughing bull?
Yeah. Or you're like eating something and they're there trying to get the fries, or they're getting used to all the scraps that they can get from us. So a lot of them are getting so used to being around us, they're not even afraid of us anymore. But I promise you, there's no least terns or black skimmers there. So, and those are my guys.
And then our last, more of a answer in the chat, more of a comment. Someone says that there is a large development property due west from the Lagoon house that has been totally cleared. Lipscomb Pirate Lane and Florida Avenue, going to need to check that land potentially for nesting seabirds as a construction site.
Yeah, if there is no grass, then it could very much be a habitat. Yeah, I will be driving around all over Brevard County. Now all the time I'm driving around, I'm like, oh, that looks like good habitat. But yeah, as long as there's no grass, it has to be just bare gravel, because there was one of the pictures that you can see, that ground site started out as just bare gravel. And then we had a period that it rained a lot. I think it was like when there was like a storm right off of the Atlantic, and there was a lot of rain, and it even flooded, and then a lot of little weeds popped up, and then that's it. They're not gonna nest when there's like a lot of trees and little bushes and things like that. So it has to be like more gravel than little bushes. So yeah, I will be driving around, and tell that person to please keep an eye out if it's by where they are, and send me an email or call the zoo, and they'll let me know so that we can, and if they can take videos or pictures. Also, I really recommend to download the Merlin bird app. It is amazing, and you can literally just be driving, turn it on, put it out your window, and it will pick up what bird it is. It is the best app ever. And yeah, oh look, there's a QR code over there.
It's a really cool app.
It's so cool, and it will tell you what species it is, and then it has different sounds of what different calls are like of juveniles, of it's the best. I'm a bird nerd now. So it's a really cool app. So if you're driving around any of these areas and you hear birds and you see birds, but you have no idea, you have this app, you stick it out your window, and it will recognize, obviously it's not perfect, but it will recognize what bird it is, and then you can kind of get a little bit more confirmation of what bird it is.
One last question, this one's from me. If we are out birding and we see banded birds, how do we report those banded birds?
So there is a program, and I'm sorry, I don't have the information. But I want to say that for sure, if you sign up for the rack line, they will probably give that information, or like the Florida Shorebird Alliance website has so much information about shorebirds throughout the whole state, because you do want to report that. And ideally a picture of it, of the information on the band. Yeah.
All right. Let's give Yagen a hand.
Wonderful. Great question.
That is